Well, it's incredible longevity. You don't see that, especially in towns of this size. It means that multiple things, that the people and the council kept electing you, and that you wanted to keep doing it. What made you want to keep doing it?
Well, it's just the fact that I like to have a lot of things going on, and this Kearney is a community that has a lot of things going on, and so I like being a part of the decision making. And with respect to the longevity, Randy Bushcutter's been there longer, and Bruce and I were both over, the 21 years, and Jonathan Nicola, who was just replaced me as the president of the council. Jonathan had 12, 14 years on the council, so we have a history of longevity, and I think that longevity is because we like what we're doing. We have some controversial issues, but yet we have civility in our discourse, and we work through it, and we've had good leadership at City Hall. Alan Johnson was the city manager when Bruce and I got on, and then Mike Morgan for basically the whole term until Brenda Jensen just replaced Michael. So we've had good staff leadership. And now as we look back, it's just been a good run, and I've always been one of those, don't tell me we can't do it, let's figure out what we can do. And people say, well, think outside of the box. And my personal view is there's a lot of things you can do within the box. You certainly have statutory limitations, you have things that you're accountable for, but there are a lot of things you can do if you just get creative and you work within the parameters you're given. And too many times people use that as a crutch, say, well, we can't do it. And then they walk off and then somebody else does it. So it's always been my view of let's figure out how we can get it done.
Over 18 years as mayor, more than 2 decades on council, there's inevitably going to be some evolution within yourself, even how you approach things. How have you changed as mayor over 18 years?
Well, I think that probably the biggest thing is more empathy and more understanding. There are some issues, and I tell people this too, every decision we make, there's a loser. People may not believe that, but anytime you pass a law, an ordinance, whatever, there are winners and losers. And so down at the legislature, I'll probably make that comment at some point in time, because when I hear the public outcry, well, we don't pick winners and losers, I'm like, wrong. Anytime you make a law, there will be somebody that's perceived losing. So you try to mitigate that impact on those that may be losing something or feel that they're impacted negatively. And I think that that's one of the things over the years I'm more sensitive to that. I'm like, okay, if we do this, then what's going to happen here? And then also looking at the long-term impact of any decisions we make. What are the unintended consequences? What are some things, if this goes wrong, how do we deal with that so that we have a good exit plan or exit strategy and guardrails in place. So I think that over time I've been more attentive to that, because the decision we make here on the council is going to impact, or potentially could impact, things years down the road after we're all gone. So we want to make sure that we've thought this through, and is it really in the best interest of our community? Probably the proudest thing to me is that we've done it with keeping a low property tax valuation. The valuations, obviously, there's that argument that, well, valuations have increased, but when you still have a low levy, you don't get the windfall that people think you do. You're gonna get your increase, there's no question about that, but you're also a growing city, and we have a lot of expenditures, and so we've been able to maintain that for a lot of years. And so you watch legislation down at Lincoln, and when they put caps on and they try to do this, and with cities that their levy is at 40, 45 cents and ours is at 15, to cap that cap also applies to us. And how does that keep our community going forward? So those are the things that I hope to bring to the legislature, to think those things through and say, okay, we got to make sure that when we have a community that's doing it, in my mind, that's doing it right, you don't penalize them. How do you reward them for doing it right and incentivize them to keep doing it right when you're trying to get control of some other issues? So those things are all things that I've learned over the years. Making contacts. I've spent a lot of time down at the legislature, so I've known a lot of the senators, the governors over the years, had different meetings with them on different issues. And so that experience working with those folks, I think, will carry over well.
So there's been evolution here in the council with yourself, but I'm sure there is with the city and with the people of Kearney as well. Have you noticed much in how the either how the people interact with the government or what their wants and desires are from the city?
Well, I think that goes back to early on Judge Wolf. He's passed some time ago, but he told me, he said, Stan, the only thing I'm going to tell you is think young. And I never really put that together till I fused into it. And we have a lot of young professionals. We have a university, we have a community college, a medical profession. I mean, we have a lot of young professionals in this community. So we have to think young. And what does that mean? I didn't register for a while, but it means, okay, we got to have good parks and recs because, you know, what are these young parents? They want to take their kids to the parks. We want to make sure we have splash pads. We want to have all the amenities the young professionals are looking for. And so that's always been important, is how do we think young and how do we keep things engaged so that people want to come to Kearney, our young folks want to come back and raise a family here. You don't put the mayor or somebody elected official on a pedestal. They're people just like you are. They're just in a different role. So feel free to talk to them. Feel free to, if you see something that's not right, give them a call. You know, challenge them on it. You know, we should always be challenged. If we're not challenged, we'll never get better. And I think those are the things that I see and that I've learned over the years and watching that culture of our community. And I've told people that it's always upon us to make sure that that culture carries forward. And I said, you know, 20 years ago, they turned it over to Bruce and me and Randy and said, here you guys go. And we hired a new city manager and, you know, they trusted us. So now it's our turn to trust the next group of leaders.
Oh, that's well said. And when I've talked with Brenda, that's been the topic. It's a new wave, and it extends beyond just the city. UNK Chancellor. There's going to be other changes locally as well, and it's exciting to see what's next. You're going to get to watch that from a different vantage point, but still looking back at what's happened over the last couple of decades. You mentioned the expansion in the northeast part of town with Patriot Park Veterans Home, Airport Terminal. Then the Eunice campus is booming. University of Nebraska Kearney is University Village, a med center, and soon to have a medical school, all while still having a vibrant downtown.
Right.
What This isn't all just the city's efforts, of course, but how did the city adequately plan so that there can be so much change in so many parts of the city, and then it happens, relatively quickly?
Well, I think it boils down to the infrastructure, because when you look at a city's responsibilities, police, fire, water, sewer, and power, basically, and roads, safety, public safety, all those things. So your fundamental responsibilities are a city to make sure that you have those ready to go. And, it's taken time. And I would tell people that I've used a sportsplex in that area, for example. There 15, 20 years ago, those were power lines going out that way. There was dirt roads, and it's just incrementally you start building it and say, well, we're going to build it to this point, and then we see something come up. Okay, then we're going to finish it, go in this direction. And then I also want to point out that the developers pay a good portion of that. And what I'm hearing at the state level is, with the state auditor taking shots at TIF. Tax increment financing in Omaha, and so a lot of that would not happen were it not for TIF. And some of those facilities are now 15 years are on the tax rolls, and we're reaping the benefits from using TIF the right way it's supposed to be used. And so I think by the fact that we have the vision of, okay, we know we're going to go this direction, we know we're going to go this direction, so let's make sure we have the infrastructure in place so that when it gets there, then we're ready to roll. You look at, and another big partner in this is the county, because a lot of these roads and streets and projects are still in the county. So we work closely with the county. So we need to give them a shout out to say, okay, they've partnered on some things that maybe wasn't on their radar, but we worked through it, and we've had some nice interlocal agreements. We've just managed to work together to figure out ways to get it done. And with the university, with the regional medical center, the city ponied up some money for that. And a lot of communities don't do that. We do it because we see it as an investment in our community. And yeah, it might have a little pain now, but 10 years down the road when those buildings are up and running, we're putting out doctors and nurses and all those things. Our community is going to be just a great community to live in. Cancer treatment center, same thing. And I told people many times that cancer treatment centers should not be looked at a negative because early detection saves lives. And if you're out west of Kearney, for example, and you don't have to go to Lincoln and Omaha, or if you're living in this area, 40, 50 miles, you can come in and get your treatment and go back home. So it is huge for this area. And so when we look at the hospitality sector, we're very strong there. When we looked at the medical sector, we're strong there. When we looked at education, we're strong there. When we look at ag, ag obviously drives the state. We have great agricultural resources in this area too. The one area that we have to keep focus on is technology. Where are we going with the technology? Do we have the fiber? Do we have the broadband? Do we have all those things that we need to do to make sure that when people come into our community, they can work from home? They have adequate access to high-speed internet, those types of things. And with our tech park, we're doing some things with Bitcoin mining there, which generates revenue for the city, which helps us to do some of these other things. So it all fits, and when we look at projects and when we look at things, is this going to be a good fit for our community, and where's the best place for it? And additionally, we have the state, the Department of Roads and things that they do with economic development. We partner all the time with the state on different projects, and so it's just a great partnership and working together with all these different entities and making sure that everybody is successful at the end of the day after the project.
Well, many people in government get to start projects like that, or maybe they see a different project finish. You've seen from changing a gravel road to asphalt to it becoming the Kearney Sportsplex, for
Right.
example.
Right.
What's it like having seen everything over for this long of time and then seeing it come to fruition?
It's just, it's part of your legacy. Some people, it's their family, that's what they do, or they put their name on something. For me, it's up here. It's like, yeah, I had a part of that. And I shared that with the senators. We had a legislative council here, and I shared it with them. I said, the things that we do in Lincoln, I want you to be able to drive around the state and realize that, yeah, I played a part in that. And many of them do. I think if you talk to Senator Lowe and Senator Hadley and Doug Christensen, ones that serve down there, they can go around different parts of the state and say, yeah, I passed a bill or I supported a bill that's how this became a reality. So when I look around the city and drive around, I'm like, yeah, I remember that. I know how we got that. I don't remember how we got the logo for to change. It was a result of going to our sister city, the Opava Czech Republic, and I was like, how are they going to know what a lighthouse in the middle of the United States represents? So that started some discussion. Next thing you know, we come up with this logo, and it's been a great logo. So the history of it, how did we become Sandhill Crane Capital of the World? Whole nother story there. So just all these things, and Yanni Park is another great one of an influx of outside money coming into the community through Mike Yanni and his friends in Omaha. And I tell people all the time, Yanni Park's in 20 years now, something like that. I said, our kids growing up, Yanni Park, they have not known that was a cornfield. It's always been Yanni Park, it's always been there. And I said, I can look back and say, yeah, we remember when, just like those that come for us, 20, 40, 50 years ago, yeah, remember when Mona was the post office, and we just follow in those footsteps of those that have come before us, and we're a community that we've made a lot of positive changes. Cabela's was the Rockwell plant. Bruce Blankenship was on, they talked Cabela's into opening a store here. We've always known as Cabela's. Nobody knew it was a manufacturing plant. So some of that history, we just need to make sure that it's shared, and I think through the Leadership Kearney programs, the young, some of those where you say, folks, you create your legacy. Here's the legacy that was set before you, and I take a lot of pride in drive around the community and look at that and say, yep, that company was successful, or these people are doing well, they're making money, they're providing for the community, and we were a part of that.
You mentioned legacy, and the people get to decide some of that for their elected officials, but what would you like to be remembered as from your tenure as Kearney mayor?
Oh, I would say that he was, and I've had different ones tell me this. They said, you're by far the most easily accessible elected official I've ever met. And to me, I take a lot of pride in that, because that's what you're there for. You're there for the people. You're there for your friends. You're there for people you don't know, what their issues are. So I would say the fact that been doing this a long time, and Yeah, you make a few enemies, but for the most part, people come up and pat you on the back and say, hey, thanks for what you're doing for our community. To me, I get a lot of pride in that. I don't need my name on things. It's just, a big dose of humility goes a long ways. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to me, is we're able to do this and working with others to get it done and say, yeah, Kearney's done it the right way, and I played part in that. So it's just the role that I carried for the last 20 years.
And the timing works out pretty well for your next step with your term at the city council and with Senator Lowe being term limited. Beyond that, why was now the right time to leave the city and go try for the state level and win it?
Honestly, that was the main reason. Is I've always had that close working relationship with the legislature, and with term limits, I knew that, well, we need to have someone that can be a strong voice for our community, and I felt that I could do that job. And it's not a stepping stone. It's not a political career. Anyone that thinks that somebody serves on the city council or the school board or county commissioners as career politicians, they're nuts. You don't make enough money. You put up with more aggravation sometimes. It's not a career politician in that sense of the word. That just drives me nuts when I hear that. These are true public servants that are trying to do the best they can to make their schools, their counties, their cities, whatever, the best that they can be. And so as I looked at that, I thought, the legislature, that would be a logical step, that I could take some experience down there. We needed to send somebody. Somebody from this district has to go. We're not going to give it up and let somebody from Lincoln or Omaha take it over. So I thought, okay, well, timing just happened to be right, because I was getting in my career at MPPD, time to wrap it up, time to wrap the city up. And then probably more importantly is it was time to turn it over to the fresh group of leaders and young folks and that next wave, as Brendan mentioned, and it was time. Do I miss it? I already miss it. Just the last 2 months. I miss seeing, the ribbon cuttings and the projects they're working on. I see them from a distance and I know what they're doing, but I'm not an integral part of that. Now, probably a couple weeks when the legislature hits up and we go the whole month of January without a day off, I'm pretty sure that my focus will change. And I've seen that already as I've been reading bills and getting more locked in on property tax relief and where we're going at with marijuana. How do we manage that? And the supporting women in sports and things of that nature. My whole mindset is starting to shift. Okay, now I'm looking at what's best for our district, but also what's best for the state. And so that focus is just enlarging, and I've found myself already shifting gears into that, which is good, because I'm going to be hitting it. You hit the ground running with term limits. When we went through orientation before Thanksgiving, a week-long orientation meeting with everyone, and of course you meet with a lot of senators that have term limited out, and they come back and they share their experiences. But to a person, they've said, years ago when they went in there, they had a year or two to learn it. And with term limits, you have to learn it quickly, because you have 8 years. But every senator that's ever served there said it was one of the best experiences they had. And to me, I've always believed it's the highest honor that I could have to serve my state. Serving Kearney and the city council is the highest honor I can do, serving this community. But serving the state, serving District 37 with Shelton and Gibbon, lived in Shelton for a while. I have a lot of friends over in Shelton and Gibbon and Kearney. To me, I want to represent them very well and be the representative in their voice down in Lincoln.
Do you have some priorities or goals for your early part as state senator?
There's, I've always had to take in the position where you listen and understand, and even when I was campaigning, there was not a single issue that was driving me to run. I get concerned when somebody has a single issue that they're running on, because there are so many other things out there. And so I've always left my mind wide open. Say, okay, here's a couple of things I want to work on. Now, there's a couple of bills that's sitting down at my desk now. One of them has to deal with, increased contribution for the police department for Class 1 cities. So that one's being discussed. I know it depends on what committees you get on too. Natural Resources Committee is one that my name's been floated around for that. I think that would be a natural fit, because that deals with power and water and all those things. And, where are we going from the state as far as power? But then, with marijuana being passed, what are the rules? What's that look like? So a lot of that's just working with the other senators and then school funding. How are we going to handle that? So I spent a fair amount of time just meeting with different groups, getting their opinions. And it impacts Kearney, where school funding, mental health, what a challenge it is. Where are we at with Medicaid, Medicare? Where are we at with DAHS and funding for the YRTC? What are we doing with military and veterans affairs when we have the Central Nebraska Veterans Home in our midst? And then just what are we doing for property tax relief to support our ag sector and rising valuations and allowing people to be able to earn a living and remain in their homes. So there are so many issues out there. There's just a couple that I've been looking at. And I think in a couple weeks, we're going to see several hundred bills. I've talked to several senators that different things. They're special, I shouldn't say special, they're specific interests on some bills that they're introducing. So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, you mentioned property taxes.
Property taxes are a big one. Yeah.
It's been the driving point of conversation for the legislature and for the governor's office for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I don't think any group has come out and said we solved it to the degree that we wanted to. There's been progress, or certainly people have championed some progress. What's it going to take to get to the point where folks are comfortable with the progress that's been?
Well, I think the where it gets to is what are you willing to give up? Because we didn't get this way overnight. We're not going to get out of it overnight. And there are things when they talk about sales tax exemptions, okay, are you willing to give that up? Are you going to increase sales tax? When I was down in Tennessee a couple weeks ago, their sales tax is 9%, but yet their property tax and some of their corporate tax, they're leading the country in some of it, but their sales tax is 9%. So, and they have how many more million people than we have? That's the challenge we have in Nebraska is that, it costs the same amount to pave a road in Brown County as it does in Omaha. So how do you provide those services? So what are you willing to give up? The inheritance tax is a big one with the counties that they're facing. I've told our county, I said, inheritance tax is probably going away. How do we supplement that, replace that revenue that they use for graveling county roads and bridge repairs and those types of things? So it really comes down to what are you willing to give up? And when we start laying those things out, we'll find out, because when you throw an idea out there, you're going to hear about it. And you're going to find out, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. Well, if you want to lower your property taxes and get your valuations under control, there are those that are saying we need to take valuations from 100% market price to a different formula. Well, that makes some sense. Or I know the governor's floated some ideas about the state taking over the teacher salaries and have the local property taxes handle the buildings. So if they want to build a Taj Mahal, the best and greatest public schools with all the amenities, then the local taxpayers can pay for that. But then you run into all kinds of other issues. So I'm open-minded on how we address these issues, but always understand when we make this decision what the unintended consequences can be, or try to project what those are going to be. And some of them it's like, well, this is not the unintended consequence, but this is the consequence, and are we willing to live with that? And so those are the things when we deal with property tax that it's going to be a long, arduous process that we'll just go through.
Reflecting on a couple of decades, we've talked legacy, but when you reflect, what are moments or projects that stand out from that time?
Okay, I can remember sitting in Governor Heineman's office when we were talking about the Cherry Avenue interchange, and having lunch, talking about that, what we needed to do, and saying, yeah, if we get this, it'll make a difference in this part of the state, and it'll make a difference for Kearney, and the state will be better for it. And then seeing that come to fruition. When we were competing with the other communities for the Central Nebraska Veterans Home, that was not an easy task. All the communities put together great proposals, and that was a challenge. And I when you go to that facility now and you see it there and the things that's built up around it with the Patriot Park Athletic Complex, softball and baseball fields, and then the Veterans Memorial that group put money together for that. That whole area out there. One of the things that we weren't successful on was when we put in a bid for the Facebook data center a number of years ago, and we lost that. Couple reasons. They don't really have to tell us, but we assumed that there was a couple reasons. Maybe it was air transportation, but they've gone to Altoona, Iowa, and if you've seen what they've done in Altoona with expansion and the amount of money that they give to the school system and the influx of revenue to Altoona, Iowa from Facebook or Meta now, to think that that could have happened here. But the time when it didn't happen, we said, okay, well, now what's our next project? Talking about the airport, that's one that's been, from day one, the airport has always been a challenge. So now getting back, and I recounted the other day that we've been through 5 different iterations in the 20 years of airport service, and 1 year of it just being black while we did the airport runway. So the airport has always been a pain to the council, and just a couple years ago when we thought we had it all settled, then SkyWest sends a note that they're going to discontinue service to 30 communities. So then we get Denver Air Connect, and now we go back to SkyWest. So who knows? That's an ongoing saga with that industry. And then, working with the university, that's been huge. I just always enjoyed going up there and seeing the progress that's being made up there. And the fact that we welcome our students to this community, they don't hear that everywhere. The international student impact on our community is huge. I love seeing our international students going around town and enjoying Kearney. They feel safe. Working with the partnerships with the county and law enforcement, that's continued. That's been great. In the hospitality sector out in that area, in 2019 when the floods come through and we're sitting out there on 2nd Avenue and I watch a power pole float across 2nd Avenue because the water was so high and it was just coming through. That was something you'll never forget. Most people don't even understand that. But to see how that whole area is built up, stronger, better, and we're working on some flood control things with the NRDs and MPPD and engineering firms so that we make sure that never happens again. So just all around the city, and I look at all areas of the city, it's just a feel-good feeling that we were part of that.
And you get to look forward now with the new council president, Mayor Jonathan Nicola, new city manager, Brenda Jensen. You don't get to pick the direction of the city now, but what excites you for the future of Kearney?
Well, I think we've got a lot of things in place. And again, I'm going to point out to the hospitality sector, there's a lot of potential out there yet. And you look at the medical and UNK, there's a lot of potential there. And we look at what we've got with housing and some things out in the northeast part of the city. So a lot of those things are there. It's on the table, and Brenda's been a part of that in a role as assistant city manager. When you go out by the recycling center, there's some property out there, but we were lacking some of the water and sewer in that particular area. So I think there's some plans there that, and once you get that in, who knows what can happen there. So I think there's just a lot of neat things. The Cherry Avenue corridor for development, I think that's great. And then we'll see what happens on the West Highway 30 if you get the roundabout in on campus. And university still has some ground out there just south of Metal Art Golf Course. There's a lot of potential out here for a lot of good projects that'll keep our community going forward.
Is there anything else that people should know about how you view your time as mayor?
It's just been an honor. It's been an honor and a privilege, and just seeing what we've been able to do for this community and to be a part of it is just an honor that I'll never forget. And hopefully that people will look back and say, yeah, he did a decent job.